Welcome back to Boss Uncaged podcast. So today is an early episode. We got you just from the other side of the world on this particular podcast today, and I'm going to deem him the recruitment boss because obviously he's a recruiter, right? So why don't you tell audience a little bit more about who you are and what you do overseas?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm super excited to be on, first of all. But yeah, my story and kind of how I got into recruitment, I think is pretty atypical. Because yeah, I used to be a business owner and I was just faced with a situation where I need to find people for myself, or I would have to do all the work myself, which wasn't very feasible at the time. And especially with the company growing bigger, we did manage it to get it like to high seven figures. So you kind of have to figure it out, and how you do it is just by doing it. And I remember being on my first job interview and thinking, okay, what are the questions that I should ask the person? I was just asking what I've heard in my own interviews when I was younger. And yeah, I remember thinking, okay, this is not good. I need to figure this out. And then yeah, over several years, just by reps, really, I got better. And what ended up happening was that when I was talking to other business owners, it was almost as if when we're talking about recruitment, it's almost as if they're taking out their notebooks and start making notes. Because for one reason or another, what I was doing and what my company was doing in recruitment was much more advanced than what most companies did. And we were just trying to get the best talent. We weren't like, trying to do anything special. And then once I saw that company, I started thinking, okay, what do I want to be doing next? And it was kind of an obvious choice for me by that point, because yeah, I could see that I could really help people that way. And that's kind of how I got into it. And today, my promise to my clients is that I'll find you an A-player employee in 6 weeks or less, or you don't pay anything. And it's easy for me to make that guarantee, because I know I'll definitely find them. I've done it enough times that I know I can handle it.
Definitely interesting. So, I mean, let's talk about like where you grew up a little bit. Because I mean, obviously, right now you're in the UK. So, like, where are you located? Kind of, where did you grow up?
Yeah, I'm originally from Latvia. It's a small country in Eastern Europe. It's right next to Russia, but more on the European side. And when I was born, the country had just gained independence. Previously, we were in the Soviet Union. And yeah, that's where I'm from. So 90s wasn't necessarily the easiest time over there. But I was lucky with having a family that really cares about education, themselves being quite kind of interested in intellectual stuff. I'd put it that way. My older brothers, one of them is a really successful doctor, the other one's a really successful lawyer. So yeah, I was kind of happy in that sense, or lucky in that sense, because yeah, I had really good surroundings, even though the country itself wasn't doing that hot at the time. But right now, Latvia is really taking off. It's an awesome place, and it's really beautiful as well. So yeah, I can't complain from about where I'm from.
Nice, nice. So, where are you located right now?
Right now, I'm in Hungary, Budapest, and I stayed in Eastern Europe. The only reason I moved was that I wanted to be in bigger city, but yeah, and that's pretty much the biggest city in Eastern Europe. That's also in the European Union. So it's easy for me to be here and to stay legally. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm today.
Nice, nice. So, I mean, with that kind of history, I mean, obviously, you have an international footprint as well. Like, if you could define yourself in 3 to 5 words, what would those words be?
So I'm an experienced and creative international recruiter for remote online businesses. That's kind of how I would summarize. So experienced, I talked about that. Creative, if you own a small business, you kind of have to be creative. You don't have these set career paths or anything you can follow. That's you have a ton of people to choose from. And then for international part, I see that in Eastern Europe, there are a ton of people like me that speak pretty good English, that have this international experience, that can easily work for American companies or other international companies. But their kind of salary expectations are much lower. So for small businesses, you're always looking for resources, right? So that's a resource, how you can be competitive, finding these people who can work for less, but also do a really good job.
Nice, nice. I mean, with talking about the international side of things, right? I mean, the country where you're originally from, I guess they speak 3 different languages, right? I mean, it would be American potentially, right? And then you have like the
Right.
English, and you have Russian, and then you have your native language. Do you speak all three of those?
Right. So Latvian and English, yes, absolutely no problems. Russian, I did learn at school, and I actually had a job interview in Russian. I was listening, I wasn't conducting it, and all I could say is "хорошо, да," but no, it's not really participate. But I could understand everything they're saying, so I would call it a half language for myself.
So that's something you think is beneficial for like your business. I mean, obviously you're doing international recruiting, but are you more so based in the UK, or are you doing like UK, Australia, Asia? Like, how far is your reach?
From wherever the kind of wherever people speak English, where it's across the globe basically, and usually the limiting factor is where kind of the HQ of the company is, where the most people are, the time zone that they're in. And some businesses are in Europe. There are other English speakers who are just happen to be based here, and then they kind of center around this like Central European time, countries like Serbia, Hungary that I'm in, even South Africa, because they're all aligned on the same time zone. Or if you're more based in the States, you still want people to kind of be active at the same time. So then it's more about Argentina, Brazil, those kind of countries where you can still find good talent.
That's interesting. I mean, you talked about like digital space, right? Now, obviously, there's recruiters that are recruiting for like corporate America that just kind of put a body inside of a cubicle, but you're talking about more in the online space. So I want to talk about that a little bit. Like, I mean, why did you pick the online space versus like the standard corporate America situation for recruiting?
It's just what I know, what I've been through. So my company was selling out of all things iPhone photography courses online, and that was for the American market, and that was the company we were able to scale to a pretty decent level. But yeah, the kind of secret behind the company was all in digital marketing. That's kind of the secret of our success, if you will. So then, yeah, that's just a space I knew really well. I had some connections in, so it's easy to get started there. And then if you go to a regular recruiter and ask them to find an, I don't know, SEO director, they could learn it, but it would be, they're just starting out, whereas I've been doing it for years. So when I'm talking with someone whose entire business is dependent on SEO, of course they're going to go with me as opposed to someone else who doesn't really understand the niche and situation. And the same goes with other things in digital marketing.
So earlier on, you were talking about your family was really big into education. So like, let's just talk about that for a little bit. I mean, like, what kind of household did you grow up in? I mean, you're saying education, but was it particularly in like technology, or was it just generally broad? Like they just had you reading. Like, describe that to us a little bit.
Yeah, so that's a great question. My mom is and was a math teacher, so kind of all of us are pretty good with numbers. I have two older brothers, and we went to kind of a special school for that. So I think that's we were exposed to that, maybe some natural ability there as well. But for one reason or another, that was strong for us. The other thing that my mom always emphasizes is that our dad was always kind of talking to us and explaining why things work a certain way, and kind of having pretty much grown up conversations with us, even though we were like 6 or something. And that, the sooner you have that exposure, I think that the sooner you develop and kind of are more aware of what's going on in the world. And when I look back, that was super helpful for me.
So would you say you were like a pretty intuitive kid growing up?
I would think so. Yeah, for sure.
Nice, nice. So, I mean, I want to talk about like, okay, so obviously you're fairly young. You have a lot of successes. It's not like the first company you've built and grown. Like, if someone is listening to this podcast, they may see you as an overnight success just because of your age. But in reality, how long have you been on your journey to get to where you are currently?
I mean, my professional career started in my first year of university, because I went to study physics, and we were touring all the physics institutes in Latvia. And soon I realized, okay, this is just not life for me. I just wasn't that interested in what they were doing, although, they're really smart people doing really advanced things, but I just sensed this is not for me. So in a way, I'm really grateful for those tours. So I thought, okay, I better figure out a different plan. And I started working as an intern, because it's funny, my brother had a dream where I'm in this big financial institution and I'm being an analyst there, and I'm announcing some news to the big CEOs and whatnot. And he said, yeah, you should do that. And then I wrote to all the banks, all the insurance companies in Latvia, say, I'm interested in work. And one of them took me on. And that was 2010, 11, something like that. So more than 10 years ago. and that's how I got started. So I was always doing stuff in parallel to university. So I guess that helped as well. But I feel like I'm only getting started. I have some interesting plans for the future, I feel like.
Nice. So I mean, how the hell you go from physics to what you're doing right now? I mean, that's a huge jump, right? I mean, completely different train of
Absolutely,
thought.
yeah, completely different. Nothing to do with what I'm doing today. Kind of. I told you I guess the second part of the story where I had a business and then I needed to hire for that business. So I guess that story makes sense. But then a high school friend of mine, he was starting a business and also kind of not entirely sure what he's doing, and he thought he'd invite me and we'd try and figure it out together. And that's what we did for around 5 years. So yeah, I had this really nice opportunity to work with a high school friend who already had a business that had kind of the beginnings of success, and then we joined and scale it quite far.
Interesting. So let's just believing in the multiverse and saying like that this is gonna be an alternate reality, right? If you can kind of go back at any period of time, let's say in the last 10 years, and you can talk to yourself for 30 seconds, when would you go back to and what would you say?
Wow, that's a good one. I mean, I would probably go to the earliest point possible because time's the one resource you can get back. So the sooner you start getting kind of benefits from time, the better. And I think, I mean, there are tons of lessons that I've had over the 10 years. One thing that hit me recently was speed of execution. So whenever you have an idea, just go ahead and do it and see what happens. And then it doesn't mean that it will work the first time, but at least you will have learned, you'll know what to do next, and you can, again, execute really fast. And then instead of thinking about something for 2 weeks, you go ahead and do it the same day. And then if you do it for 14 times within 2 weeks, you're so much better. You're so much more ahead. So this kind of speed of execution, I suppose, that's something that hit me recently. And since I've started doing that, I see so many great results in my own business. So, but that's just the latest big thing that hit me. I think I get those every month or so.
Earlier, you're talking about your parents. You're talking about you grew up in an education-based household, but I mean, obviously, you're an entrepreneur by heart. It seems like every aspect of the story that you told so far, there's always been some interlude or jump into some entrepreneurism. So, are any of your parents or any ancestors in your family, were they any of them entrepreneurs or business owners?
Not that I know of. I mean, they were. If I look at my parents, they were always kind of in leadership positions. It's kind of hard though for them because the entire system in the country was, it didn't allow entrepreneurship. So if you really needed to want to do that, because it was kind of illegal to do that in Soviet Union. So yeah, I think they have this kind of natural leadership tendencies, and also my grandparents, but they were I guess forced, or they had to put them in different directions, like my grandmother being a lead doctor, my grandfather being a lead engineer. They had to kind of channel these tendencies, I suppose, elsewhere.
Do you think, like me, you're talking about like doctors and lawyers, you think that their work ethic that they had kind of influenced you to be successful to where you are today?
For sure, yeah, that's undeniable.
Nice. So it seems like you grew up in a pretty tight knit household. So like my next question is kind of like obviously growing up in that environment, growing up with education being the primary factor, growing up with with having people to bounce ideas off of. How do you currently juggle like your work life with your family life, being that you grew up in that environment?
Yeah, so I mean, work like this past couple of weeks has been really busy, and I'm really happy or lucky once again that with my wife, because she kind of sees it and she understands it and she supports me there. But most of the time I don't try to be busy all the time and do that's kind of not the way I operate. I would rather put in my fair 8 hours, but really give it my best shot and do what's the things that really will move my business. So usually it's not a problem at all. Now that I'm really busy, wake up early, have everything structured, I guess is my response to making sure that I do still get to spend some time with my family, get to call my family back home and all those things. So if it's an issue, then structure and making sure that everything's scheduled is my response.
Nice, nice. So you're talking about, waking up early and giving allocating time to family. So with your waking up early schedule, I mean, what's your morning routines look like?
So right now it's kind of crazy. I get up at 4:45 and then I grab a coffee, read all the trash sites that I want to read, like Facebook and Reddit, and then I don't touch them for the rest of the day. I kind of get it out of my system. And then by, I don't know, 5:30, I'm already at the computer and working. And of course, I don't have any meetings in that time. So that's the time I need to do a fair bit of writing these days. So that's when I do writing, or if there's anything I need to kind of catch up on, then that's the time I do it. And then throughout the day, it's mostly meetings, because for me it's interviews still, and I'm interviewing people that could replace me in my own business, as well as of course interviewing for my clients. And that's pretty much how the day goes. And then whatever time I end, I definitely have dinner together with my wife. If I need to go back to work afterwards, that's what I do. And then back to bed at 9 p.m. and then do it all over again.
Definitely interesting. I mean, you brought up a point about, you read Reddit and you read Facebook early on, and it's kind of like, are you doing that for like work purposes, or is it more like entertainment?
Not at all. No, no, it's just making a deal with myself that, okay, I want to do these things that are not good for me, but kind of feel good in the moment. And they're not productive at all. They're major time sucks. But I kind of, it's a deal I'm making with myself. I'll put it that way.
Nice, nice. So I mean, with that, you talked about Facebook, you're talking about Reddit. I would think that part of what your daily routine would look like, as far as a recruiter, would be, do you dabble in LinkedIn at all?
Oh yeah, LinkedIn is where I spend the rest of my day. I don't read the newsfeed that much. There's kind of everyone wants to be nice on there, so there's no feedback. So people start posting pretty crazy things, and no one wants to say call anyone out, because it's their professional reputation they put on the line, and they're not going to do it for an online argument or anything like that. So the kind of feed is not worth it, and don't spend your time there, I'd say. But it's reaching out to people, talking to them, understand, kind of offering positions, understanding what it is that they expect, and try and convince them that it's a good idea to get on a call with me. And usually if I reach out to a candidate, it is, but still communicating the value of kind of, continuing the hiring process with me and my client.
Nice, nice. So, just going back to like your bio, at the end of your bio, right, it stated that you're known for the 7-step recruitment process. So let's just talk about that. Obviously the 7 steps, we have no clue what these 7 steps are. So like allude to us, what does that look like?
So I'll simplify it a little bit, just so it's 7 steps are kind of hard to keep them all in your mind, but let's break them down into 3 bigger stages. So the first one is kind of selling the position, and it's making sure that what you have to offer is actually interesting to the job market. And the usual job description goes something like, okay, here's a list of things that we expect from you. Here's a list of things we offer. If you're lucky, they include a salary. But it's kind of, you're left scratching your head thinking, okay, what is this role really, and what will I do? My goal is to, first of all, identify in the first 10 seconds the type of person that would do really well in this role, and the type of person I'm really talking to. And then just explain in simple terms what the job really is about, why it's a good opportunity for that person. So it's pretty much sales and marketing work that I'm doing there, because recruitment is no different from sales, but instead of selling to your clients, you're selling to the candidates. So that's step 1. Step 2 is picking out the people that you actually think would be good fits for the role. LinkedIn is by far the best resource for that, because not every single professional in the world, but almost everyone is on LinkedIn, and you can search it. So it means you pretty much have access to everyone in the world that you want to get access to. Your job is to choose. What I do every week, I choose 50 people for one role that I want to reach out to, that at that moment I think are perfect fits for the role. And I send them my offer and basically get their feedback. If they're interested, that means I'm on the right track. If they're not interested, I usually can sense, okay, what we're getting wrong, why people are not interested. I can talk to them still, even if they're not interested. And then this thing is happening where week by week, I'm just learning and finding out more. And by week 3 or 4, I know exactly the person that we need to be going for, exactly what we need to tell them to convince them to come to us. And that's why I can tell people that I'll find someone for you in 6 weeks or less. So that's step number 2. And then the last kind of stage, I guess is the more appropriate term. The last stage is kind of filtering those people and making sure that what you thought they really are. So that they have the required skills for the job, that they would be a good fit with the company, that it actually makes sense in their career trajectory to join you. Because you could get like an awesome person to join you, but if it doesn't make sense for them to stay, they'll be gone in like, I don't know, 9 months or something. And you don't want that either. So kind of, this filtering process and making sure you don't let in people that you shouldn't let in. And it's also good for the candidate because if you're making sure it's a good idea for you to take them, it's usually a much better for them to join as well, a much better idea for them to join. So these are the 3 big stages. So kind of understanding how to sell the position, finding those people and kind of convincing them that it really is for them. And the last step is kind of filtering and making sure that they really are good fits as you thought previously.
I mean, that's interesting. So I just want to like visualize that. So like I'm going to use the analogy of like a pipeline. So on a day-to-day basis, you're putting in 50 people that could potentially fit a role. From each day that you put those 50 people in, and you're looking at a 6-week turnaround time to where possibly one of those 50 people per day can kind of get into a role. So that's a 6-week turnover that's going every single day, right? Like
where, yeah. I mean, for one role, I would do 50 per week because it does take some time for them to get back to me to, maybe get on a few interviews and see feedback and kind of in a real conversation. So it's not 50 every day, but it's 50 every week.
50 every week. So essentially 200 a month. So in that 6-week time, let's just say like, okay, you have 200 a month, and to say that turns out to be 300 people in that 6-week time. Like, and then you probably still have an onboarding process. Like once someone raises their hand and they're like, okay, look, I want this opportunity. I want to get on a bandwagon. Then you start the onboarding. So my question is kind of like, okay, you have 6 weeks leading up, then you have your onboarding, which is the time frame. Like when do you actually cash out the value for that recruitment?
Okay, gotcha. Yeah. So just to give you like a little comment to make it, maybe the understanding better for everyone that's listening. So it's usually the first maybe 3 weeks, maybe 4 if we're a little unlucky, that the reaching out happens, and the remaining weeks are for going through the recruitment process, all the interviews, anything you need, this kind of filtering process, the last stage that I mentioned. So that's one thing. But in terms of my business and how that's structured, so I tell people that, if I don't find someone for you in 6 weeks, you don't pay. And that's perfectly fine by me. They do pay in the end because I do find people for them. But how the payment is structured, that before they start, I ask for maybe 25 to 50% deposit, just so I know that they're serious, that they actually want to look for someone. Once that's come in, I get right on writing the job ad and reaching out to people. At any time in those 6 weeks, I tell them they're totally free to request a refund. And if they do, no questions asked, I provide it. And then the remainder is kind of given to me when the job contract is signed.
Gotcha. So it's like a I mean, you're basing it pretty much in the digital space. So you're saying half up front, half in completion.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So this is rewinding back, and like I like to jump around these conversations, and I put these landmarks in my mind based upon what you said. And earlier on, you were talking about writing. So like this next question is about like reading and writing, and it's a 3-part question, right? So first part is like, the past 10 years, like what books did you read to kind of get you currently where you are? Like what's your top 2 books that you can select from that?
Okay.
Second part of that is
okay. Yeah.
Second part is what books are you reading right now? And the third part is, have you had an opportunity to write any books as of yet?
Gotcha. All right. So first part, in the past 10 years, a lot of books. I think there's more than 200 business books that I've read, and it's actually over the past maybe 3 years. And yeah, I have a book club with a few buddies of mine that also own quite successful businesses. And we just, every couple of weeks, we choose a book that all of us read, and then we discuss it. And that's kind of, that makes sure that I'm reading continuously. So, because you have to do it if you're a business owner, you have to get better every day, because especially if you have some sort of service, people are paying you because you know something they don't know, so you have to continue to acquire knowledge. So a top book, it's hard to choose just a couple, but if we're talking about recruitment, that's something that could be very useful to the readers. Who comes to mind as the most useful book on recruitment I've ever read? It's by Jeff Smart, and it kind of, the 7-step process that you mentioned is based on that book, kind of loosely, but still is. And they just give you a process to follow. If you implement it, you're going to be, at least 80% of the way there. You're not going to make any major mistakes if you follow their advice. So that's kind of something that was a foundation for me when I started recruiting. So that's a huge one. Outside of that, I mean, yeah, the first one that comes to mind is Ray Dalio Principles. He talks about how a company should run, and I think he got it quite close to perfect. So that's a huge resource if you want to dig into that. Recently, my biggest business advice crush, if you will, has been Alex Hormozy. So he owns acquisition.com. He does 8 or 9 figures, something crazy with his companies. But he puts out a ton of free content. That's just, whenever there's a YouTube video, I feel like, okay, I think I know what he's going to talk about. And then I watch it, and he does talk about that thing that he said he will talk about, but he always gives a perspective that I didn't expect. And that's quite rare for me if I'm looking at videos about business. So he always has something really interesting to share. His thing on how you should structure your offer has just been game changing for my own business. So that's my recent favorite topic. As for books myself, I haven't written anything. It's not in the pipeline. Maybe I will someday. I read so many of them that I might one day write one myself too.
Yeah, it would definitely be interesting. I mean, your viewpoint on recruitment is a little bit different than the normality, right? So I think having a book in that space would be definitely fruitful. So, I mean, talking about future tense, right? So, I mean, where do you see you and your business 20 years from now?
20, that's a long time. But for this current business, I think the timeline I'm kind of thinking about is maybe 3 to 5 years. And for an agency, my preferred model is kind of a boutique agency. So some maybe around 10 people that really know what they're doing. If you have this problem in a specific niche, which would, for in our case, be recruitment for online businesses, you can come to us and we'll help you. We'll serve you perfectly, and you're never have to worry about recruitment from that perspective. So that's kind of what I'm going for. I imagine it would maybe be mid 7 figures business, and that's quite all right by me. And to around this time, I'm hiring a kind of second in command or employee number 2. So someone who can be in charge of operations and kind of someone I can teach everything I know about recruitment, and they could kind of take over from me, because I'm not willing to give up anything if it decreases the quality of the work that we're putting out there. And I feel like there are enough people that can get an agency to that stage, and it can be a really nice, stable business. But for myself, as soon as I can pass on that, I'm interested in kind of the entire recruitment vertical. So it can be coaching, it can be software, it can be candidate platforms. All of those things are interesting to me. So kind of, a big reason also why I started a recruitment agency is because that's something that every single business in the world needs. So it's kind of an unlimited niche. So I wanted to be in a big one, and I think this is quite a good one for me.
It's interesting because I mean, you're talking about recruitment, right? You're talking about like your 7-step process, and we talked a little bit about like Facebook. We talked a little bit about LinkedIn. So I really want to like dive into like your production behind house. Like, so like what software do you use on a day-to-day basis that you would not be able to do what you're doing without having access to that platform?
So number one is LinkedIn Recruiter, and that's a completely amazing software. You don't even need the especially if you're just hiring for yourself, you don't need their most premium option. It's about $130 or something per month, and that's less than a job board post. And job board posts, in my experience, they just don't have the value that reaching out to candidates that you think are perfect fits has. So yeah, that's tool number one. It's perfectly searchable. You can look for anything in the world and it'll show it to you in terms of potential candidates. And the other thing that I really like to use is Slack, because I like in my previous job, I hated that it's instant because it was more about building a product and kind of long-term work. Right now, it's making sure that things happen really quickly and that once we have a hot candidate, we can push them through all the stages that I have in my process. So this instant communication, this back and forth, is this thing that we build on this momentum, and that's how we can get candidates through very fast. So I wouldn't say it's anything fancy, just Slack and LinkedIn, but if you use them right, they're really powerful.
Nice. So, I mean, let's talk about like your ideal customers, ideal clients. I mean, we're talking about the digital space, right? And that's a wide gamut of individuals. It can be kind of like the mom and pop style. It can be like the solopreneur. So ideally, if you had to depict an ideal avatar, who would that individual be?
Yeah, it's probably a business owner starting from 6 figures, maybe to low 8 figures. And the kind of lower range of that is because I want them to have enough stability that, I can tell a candidate wholeheartedly that this is a good idea for you to join. The company is going to be around and it's a good home for you. And they have the resources to pay for someone who's good and they know that the candidates are worth the salary they're paying them. They're not trying to squeeze them for every last dollar. On the other end, I don't like to work for companies that are too huge, simply because the bureaucracy starts to creep in. Everything starts taking slower. You want to take, instead of like 3 interview max that we usually do, you want to start doing 5 interviews, some people even more. And then it's not this kind of instant process. I can't keep my promise necessarily that it's going to be 6 weeks. Of course, I communicate that up front, but it's not the way I prefer to work. And just from my own belief is that it's more satisfying to work for a small business. It's just more enjoyable for the candidates. So kind of it also aligns with my beliefs about what's a good workplace and where people should like to end up.
Interesting. So let's say you're talking to them. I say that person's listening to this particular episode right now, and they're hearing everything they're saying. They're listening to your story, and they're in sync with you. What words of wisdom or words of insight would you give to them to help them continue on their journey to be successful?
Yeah, I mean, the thing that's also another kind of lesson that I recently realized, and it's funny because I'm in recruitment anyway, but for the longest time, I thought it always has to be me that does the work because, I put it together. I know I have all the background. I'm the person that knows, but you have access to 8 billion people. So there's going to be a person that can do it better than you, that expect less in terms of income from you. So you can give it to them. They'll be really happy that they have work and something meaningful to work on. And you can move on to the next thing. And kind of this, it's usually not a problem of deciding what to do for your business, but the problem is this, to decide who's going to do it. And if you have the tools to find these people that, can do this work and can do it better than you at a cheaper rate, then it just opens up so many possibilities. And just to give you an example, one of these companies that are in these low 8 figures, it's actually a friend of mine who's running that company. And we were working together, and he said, I wish I could hire more. I simply don't have the budget. But as soon as he has any budget, he's always hiring because he knows the power of bringing on talented, driven people to his company. So as soon as he has any sort of availability on his budget, he's hiring again. And I think that's just kind of beautiful. It shows the power of working together and kind of, trusting other people to help you build whatever you're building.
I mean, I think that's definitely interesting. I mean, hiring people definitely helps evolve any business, but I think part of hiring is before you hire, you have to have like systems in place or statements of work. Like, so that way, when you hire onboard someone, they know exactly what they're doing because somebody has done it before them, and that track record of information is listed out. Is that something that you work with clients as well?
Yeah. So, I mean, a part of my process is I ask them all the questions that they need answered, and if they don't have good answers, that's perfectly fine. But I kind of give them my take and suggestions, and I've worked with quite a few companies now, so I've seen many different things. But I do make sure that they have these things that they need to know. Many people just come in and say, "This is exactly what we need." Some other people come in and they're a little unsure. They're not they kind of know the direction they're trying to go in, and then I try and help them decide where it is that we should end up.
Nice. So, how can someone find you? I mean, do you have a social media profile, website?
Yeah, recruitermill.com is the best place to go to. You'll see at the top of the website there's an opportunity to either shoot me a message or to even book a strategy call with me. I'm always happy to interact people, help them see what their situation is. Even if you're not ready to hire today, I'll kind of give you my take on your situation, because right now we're kind of talking about theory and how things work in general, but it's always more helpful just to look at a specific situation and analyze that. And of course, that's the situation of your business. So yeah, let's just get on a call and talk about it for 30 minutes. It's definitely going to be helpful to you.
Nice, nice. So we're going into the bonus round. Got a couple of bonus questions for you. You ready?
All right.
All right.
I'm ready.
So I think this will be a pretty interesting. I mean, being that you've been in the game for let's say about a decade and you're fairly young, but you've had a lot of different achievements. So what is your most significant achievement to date?
Are we talking business or are we talking outside of business?
Well, give me one of each. How about that?
Okay, sweet. So I think, yeah, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind with business is actually developing this system that can find people in 6 weeks or less. That I just see it's the biggest pain point of people I work with. I wasn't always able to do that. 6 years ago, I made completely atrocious hires, and just to look at the journey and see that now I'm able to offer something that everyone wants. That's the first thing that comes to mind. Outside of work, I don't think it's a specific accomplishment, but I'm just really happy about the family I'm building with my wife. Work is cool and it's something I do, and I kind of at this stage look at it as my hobby. But family always comes first for me.
Nice. All right, I got another bonus question for you. If you could spend 24 hours with anyone, dead or alive, uninterrupted for those 24 hours, who would it be and why? And again, your wife is not included in this answer.
Yeah. So I mean, I would cheat, and the first person that came to me, actually, okay, I'm not gonna use my own bloodline, but I will use hers because I love my family, but I completely love hers. We just get along perfectly, and I never get to meet her, but it was her grandmother, and just the way everybody talks about her, she was a truly special person. So yeah, I never got to meet her, so I'd love to spend some time with her. Outside of kind of family stuff, that's a good one. I mean, the first person that comes to mind, honestly, Alex Hormozy. If you're listening to this, hit me up. I'd love to chat to that dude, because the way he talks about business, he makes things that I used to think are really complicated really obvious, and he is right when he's talking about them. So yeah, I'd just love to chat business with him, because I've connected with him so well over YouTube.
Nice. So going into closing, I always like to, give whoever I'm interviewing an opportunity to become the host of the Boss Uncaged podcast. So the microphone is yours.
I like
I'm now your guest. Interview me. What do you have any questions you'd like to ask me?
I love the last question that you came up with. I'd never seen it. I don't know if anyone's ever asked you that, but who would be the person you'd spend 24 hours with?
So over the years, it's definitely changed. I've answered that question multiple times before. At one time, it was definitely Einstein. Another time, it was Steve Jobs. Another time after that, it was Elon Musk. And to your point, I mean, it's kind of like thinking about ancestors, right? So, I mean, if I can kind of go back in time, I would probably try to figure out who was the first entrepreneur in my bloodline. Like, obviously, I'm getting this
I like
ingenuity
that.
from
Yeah.
someone. So I just don't know where did it really start? I don't know how far we have to go, but I would travel back and find that person. I would like to kind of pick their mind, like what inside of them made them want to become an entrepreneur. Like, considering that it was in history, and to your point with your family, they didn't have opportunity to be an entrepreneur. Maybe that person didn't have the same opportunity, but they still wanted to do that. And I would love to pick their brain for 24 hours to kind of see what was their drive and motivations.
That's awesome. I like that. And as for future, what do you want for yourself in 20 years time?
20 years time, I mean, Boston Cage, it's growing. So I wanted to kind of grow into like a media outlet for entrepreneurs. And I'm not going to say competing with like Inc. and Entrepreneur, but I'm building this platform that essentially gives business owners and entrepreneurs an opportunity to kind of tell their stories, not necessarily talk about their business, but we are going to talk about your business. And it's just a different way of looking at it. But then the audience could kind of then communicate with the individual a lot more. So 20 years from now, I would love to see like, maybe one of my kids jumping into this space and taking it over, or at least getting to where right now we're global, but I want to be like more than global. Like could we get to
Right.
like 100 million people would be ideal, would be great.
That's awesome, man. I'm happy to be a part of the journey, man.
No, yeah, I definitely appreciate it. I mean, I appreciate you reaching out, and it was funny because I was asked this questionnaire, and it was like I think you found me on Listen Notes, and that was the first time I'm like, okay, I usually get Matchmaker, I usually get like recruiters, but like how did that go? I mean, like how did you find us on Listen Notes? It's just something that I'm intrigued about finding out more about.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I have someone helping me with getting on podcasts, and then I look at podcasts and decide which ones I want to get onto. But they just tell me, okay, this seems like a good opportunity. Usually, it is. I look
Mhm.
at yours. I thought it's awesome, an awesome fit for me. So yeah, I definitely wanted to be on.
Cool, cool, cool. Well, I definitely appreciate you. I mean, I think you gave a lot of insight as the recruitment boss, and anyone that's looking for recruiters, I mean, by all means, I mean, definitely reach out to you because you have a global footprint. So again, I appreciate you being on the show and taking time out your schedule today.
It was my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Great. S.A. Grant.